The Haunted Carnival. The moon hung heavy in the sky like a swollen, glowing eye, casting long, eerie shadows across the silent town of Harper's Crossing. Its pale light bathed the abandoned fairgrounds in a sickly glow, illuminating the old, rusting rides that stood like forgotten giants, frozen in time. Harper's Carnival had been closed for over 3 decades, but the whispers of its cursed past still lingered. It was said that every full moon the carnival would come alive again, as it had the night those who dared enter met unspeakable fates. Mysterious deaths, sudden disappearances. No one could explain what had happened, but the town feared the place, and over time the story became legend. Most stayed far away, except for a few who craved the thrill of proving the legends wrong. "Are you guys sure about this?" Liam asked, his voice barely audible over the sound of their footsteps crunching on the gravel. His eyes darted nervously, scanning the overgrown weeds that lined the cracked pavement. The wind seemed to carry with it a low, mournful whistle, as if warning them to turn back. Maya rolled her eyes, leading the group of 5 into the entrance. "Come on, Liam. We've talked about this a million times. It's just an old story to scare people. No one actually knows what happened here." "But they never found those bodies," Sarah whispered, her fingers playing nervously with the hem of her jacket. "I mean, they said the people who came to the carnival were never seen again." "They probably ran off," Jason chimed in, shaking his head. He tried to sound brave, but the slight tremor in his voice betrayed his fear. "They wanted to disappear, that's all. People love to exaggerate stuff like this." Emma, the most pragmatic of the group, walked beside him, staring at the rusty ticket booth that stood at the entrance like a sentinel. "Well, whatever happened, we'll be the first to actually see it for ourselves. This place has been locked up for decades. No one's been inside in years." They stood before the large iron gates, twisted with age and tangled with vines, their towering spires looming overhead. The gates had been locked with heavy chains for as long as anyone could remember, but tonight was different. As if in anticipation of their arrival, the chains had fallen away and the gates hung open. A cold shiver ran down Maya's spine as she stared into the dark void beyond. She tried to push it aside, but there was something in the air, something that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "Guess there's no turning back now," Maya said with forced bravado. She glanced at her friends, noticing the unease on their faces, but pushed forward. Together they stepped through the gates and into Harper's Carnival. The moment they crossed the threshold, the wind stopped. The silence was immediate and deafening, as if the entire world had suddenly been swallowed by a void. The carnival was unnaturally still. Not even a breeze stirred the overgrown grass. "Did it just get quieter?" Emma asked, her voice barely more than a breath. They moved deeper into the fairgrounds, stepping over discarded popcorn bags, broken balloons, and forgotten prizes that littered the path. The air felt thick, almost suffocating, as if they were walking through an invisible fog that clung to their skin. The ride stood around them like towering sentinels, silent, lifeless. The Ferris wheel, its rusted spokes silhouetted against the moonlit sky, creaked faintly in the distance. The carousel, once brightly painted with galloping horses, was now faded and worn, its figures frozen mid-motion as though waiting to spring to life. Jason stopped in front of the carousel and let out a low whistle. "This place is a total ghost town. Creepy as hell." "You don't say," Sarah muttered, her eyes darting to every shadow that seemed to stretch and warp unnaturally under the dim moonlight. She pulled her jacket tighter around her as if the chill in the air had seeped into her bones. Suddenly, a soft melody drifted through the air, the unmistakable haunting tune of a calliope. It was slow at first, almost like a distant echo, but it grew louder, more jarring, as if the broken machine were forcing itself to play through decades of rust. Maya froze, her heart skipping a beat. "Did you hear that?" The others stopped, their eyes widening as the eerie music enveloped them, filling the air with an unnatural presence. The tune was familiar yet twisted, as though something malevolent was toying with the cheerful melody. "That wasn't on before," Liam said, his voice shaky. His fists clenched at his sides, his body rigid. "There's no way this place still has power." Suddenly, the carnival erupted in light. Bulbs flickered to life all around them, illuminating the dilapidated rides in bursts of color that looked out of place in the desolate surroundings. The lights blinked erratically, casting long, jagged shadows across the fairground, making the place seem even more grotesque than before. "Okay, that's it. We're leaving," Emma said, turning on her heel. But the moment they took a step back toward the entrance, a metallic screech tore through the air, and the gates slammed shut behind them with a force that rattled the ground. Jason ran to the gates and yanked on the iron bars, but they didn't budge. "It's locked. We're trapped." Panic surged through the group. Liam banged on the gate with both hands, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "This isn't happening." Maya's heart raced in her chest as her mind struggled to comprehend the impossible. "Calm down," she managed to say, though her voice was far from steady. "There has to be another way out." As they turned to face the carnival again, the rides began to move. The carousel started to spin slowly, its horses jerking to life with each rotation. The Ferris wheel creaked and groaned, its massive frame turning with a sickening grind of metal on metal. The calliope music grew louder, more distorted, filling the air with an unbearable cacophony. Then came the laughter. It started low, almost a whisper carried on the wind, but it quickly grew, sharp, manic, and full of malice. The laughter echoed from every direction, bouncing off the carnival's rotting structures and surrounding them in a wall of sound. Who's there?" Sarah stammered, her voice trembling as she backed away from the spinning carousel. Her eyes were wide with terror, her body shaking uncontrollably. No answer came. Only the laughter, now closer, seemed to echo inside their heads. Maya's breath hitched as her gaze darted around, searching for the source. The shadows moved unnaturally, twisting and warping as if alive. For a moment she thought she saw something lurking in the darkness between the rides. Something that wasn't human. "What is that?" Emma gasped, pointing toward a figure emerging from the shadows. A tall, grotesque figure stepped out from behind the Ferris wheel. Its body was long and gaunt, with skin stretched impossibly tight over its bones. Its face was painted like a carnival clown, but the makeup was smeared, and its eyes were hollow pits of darkness. Its grin stretched too wide, filled with sharp, rotting teeth. The figure raised a hand, beckoning them closer with a slow, deliberate motion. Liam stumbled back, his eyes wide with terror. "We need to get out of here. Now." As if in response, the rides around them began to move faster. The carousel whirled at a dizzying speed, the horses' painted eyes now glowing with an unnatural light. The funhouse lights flickered on and off, revealing flashes of twisted, grinning faces inside. "Run!" Maya screamed, grabbing Sarah's arm and dragging her toward the nearest ride. A funhouse with a gaping clown mouth entrance. But the carnival wasn't letting them go that easily. As they sprinted through the funhouse entrance, the doors slammed shut behind them. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of decay and something else. Something putrid like death. The mirrors that lined the walls reflected their distorted images back at them, but something was wrong. In one of the mirrors, Maya's reflection wasn't her own. It grinned at her, an evil, twisted version of herself, beckoning her to come closer. "Maya!" Sarah's voice snapped her out of her daze. They kept running, their footsteps echoing off the narrow corridors as the funhouse seemed to twist and turn on its own, guiding them deeper into the maze of horrors. The walls felt alive, pulsing as if the carnival itself had a heartbeat. Behind them, the laughter followed, growing louder, more frantic. Jason, who had been leading the way, suddenly stopped. "Dead end," he shouted, panic rising in his voice as they all skidded to a halt. The corridor they had been following ended abruptly in a brick wall that hadn't been there moments before. "No, no, no!" Sarah cried, pounding her fists against the wall. The distorted laugh echoed through the funhouse, closer now as the carnival's twisted inhabitants began to close in. "We're not getting out of here, are we?" Liam whispered, his face pale as death. Maya's heart sank, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We have to keep trying. If you like this story, subscribe and share.